Hello and thank you for watching the Angry Rooster Creations channel. Today we are looking at a pair of fountain pens here. Both of these pens are Hongdian C2 fountain pens. They are pretty much identical except for the colors here. These are metal bodied, metal capped, with a plastic grip section, and they are a size 5 nib pen. Now these are a variation of the Hongdian C1 pen that has been out for a while. I don't have a C1, but it essentially has the same barrel, but instead of having this standard size 5 style nib and feed, it has a hooded nib and feed section. These pens share the same feed and nib as the Hongdian M2 pocket pens. This is the M2 brass, which I've already showed on this channel in a separate video. But they have the same nib and feed is that, which has that sort of springy, not necessarily a flex nib. It's not actually a flex nib, but it has that kind of springy quality to it. It's not a 100% stiff nib. Now this one here I have had inked, and it has been inked for a while. This is it's inked with Noodler's Polar Blood Falls. It's a red ink. These pens have the standard Hongdian full size 3.4 millimeter converter. I believe this is exactly the same converter that's in the Black Forest pens, and I think most of their standard size pens have that converter as well. Things like this little M2 obviously have a short converter because they are a small pocket pen. And actually I should take this one apart so I can pull that converter out. Like I said, it's a standard 3.4 mil Chinese style converter, and I believe these pens here will take the standard 3.4 mil Chinese cartridges. These also have a little spring in there so you can shake the pen and break the surface tension. On these sections they have a metal piece that's pressed into or molded into a injection molded plastic section here. So the part you actually grip is plastic. There's a silicone O-ring here to tighten the barrel threads, to tighten the barrel of the section joint when you tighten this up to help prevent these from backing out. Like I said, this barrel is a piece of apparently a deep draw stamped metal barrel with a pressed in threaded metal portion here. And then the nib and feed unit unscrews from this pen, and as you can look down in there, the nib and feed unit actually threads into the metal piece in this section, and this trim ring is also metal. Now in my video that I made of the M2, I mentioned that the nib and feed, actually the piece there that unscrews for the nib and feed on that M2 is keyed, which corresponds to the flat on this this feed. But on this version here, there is not actually any kind of a keyed portion. That is a completely cylindrical feed unit here. So these are just friction fit into the section here. So I do believe that these will actually work with the feed and the nib from the Black Forest style pins, which are slightly different. They have a different feed and they do have a different nib. They're the same size though. But I did notice that as being different from the M2 pocket pins. Now, another thing of note is on the cap. The cap here, like I said, is also metal. There's a metal ring here. This cap has a plastic liner. I'm going to get a light here so we can see if we can get a look down inside of it. It has a plastic cap liner down in there. As you can see, that is a solid one-piece plastic cap liner. There are no fasteners, screws, or plugs on the top of that. And that appears to be glued into the actual metal portion of the cap. And that, as you can kind of see there, that chrome trim ring is a separate piece of metal that's pressed up in here. And the clip is not an internally sprung clip. It's just a standard stamped steel clip. It's a pretty stout clip. It's sprung pretty well for what it is, but you know, there is no any kind of a cammed spring-loaded mechanism inside of the cap. And when we look at the top here, the finial says C2 Lan Tien Hongdian. Now, one thing I would like to note also on these, the only other video I've seen of this particular pin out there, which I did watch before I bought mine, is a pin that was put out by Doodlebud. And in his video, he said that these pins do not post. And I believe that's mostly accurate. If you just go to post this, it will not just sit on here. It kind of hangs a little bit there, but if you go to moving this pin in your hand, you can very easily unseat that cap. To get this pin to post, you have to push this and really jam it onto the pin. If you do that, it will post, but I mean, it takes a pretty considerable amount of force. With this yellow one, of course, I haven't actually written with this yellow one yet because I haven't kept it, you know, it's not inked. I haven't inked it up or kept it inked. I have actually yet to ink this pen for the first time, but I have been using this red pen some, and with it, it's more finicky about being posted. I can get it to stay, it'll post, but I have had when I was writing with this, as I written along, all of a sudden it just decided to dislodge itself, of course. And I'm not entirely sure. Essentially what happens is that plastic cap liner up there just sort of gets wedged on the tapered section of this barrel, which this barrel you can probably kind of, I believe you can see about right here, it starts to taper. So you're essentially you have a squared edge on that cap liner meeting a tapered section, or the tapered barrel on this pin, and you're just kind of jamming it in there till it sticks. So technically, you can get these pins to post, but like I said, it requires quite a bit of force to do so, and then requires quite a bit of force to remove said cap. And like I said, when I have written with this pen with it posted, it can lose its cap, especially if you're moving the pen back and forth, or you're kind of like right there. It did it. If you kind of move your thumb, or you kind of ever having a tendency to actually pinch the cap with your thumb for any reason, change your grip or something, you can very easily unseat this cap, and then you have to once again grab it and just kind of really jam it together. So in the grand scheme of things, it's probably best to consider this to be a pen that does not post, because even though, like I said, you can get it to post, it may not stay posted. And it seems like the more I've used this, the less of a the harder it is to get this cap to stay posted. So, you know, for me, I have somewhere between a size medium and size large hand as far as men's glove sizes. By the length of my hand, finger length, I wear a size large glove. But technically, by the width of my hand, according to size charts, the width of my hand is a medium. It's just my fingers are too long to wear a medium-sized glove. So that kind of maybe gives you a reference for my hand size. I don't have a problem writing with this pen unposted. And as a little bit of a size comparison, I'm going to bring in a Lamy Safari here. It is just slightly shorter, about a half of an inch shorter than a Lamy Safari that's unposted. For reference, so if you're someone that has used a Lamy Safari or has experience with a Lamy Safari, you know, that'll kind of give you an idea. But as far as actual size, it is just under 5 inches. It's about 5 11/16 of an inch from the end to the actual tip of the nib. So from the tail end of the pen to the actual end of the section here is about 4 1/16 inches. So maybe that gives you an idea. I could see that maybe some individuals with really large hands, you might be holding a pen and it might end up like this when you hold it. But for, like I said, with my hand being lengthwise a men's large size glove, I think most people will probably be able to write with this pen just fine unposted. But that is a thing to note with this particular pen. Now, both of these pens that I have here have extra fine nibs. So I'm gonna do a little bit of a writing test here. This is just a piece of 20-pound copy paper. It's nothing special. Okay, I was kind of expecting this to maybe have dried as much as I've had it uncapped. So let's see. So, you know, it writes pretty well. Now, I have noticed that when I've done a lot of writing, if I'm writing really fast and I go to strike a T, so I'm going to just try to strike a bunch of T's here. Sometimes, I don't know why it is with this particular pen. If I'm doing, you know, if I do a T like that right there, if I go to strike it really fast, if you're doing a lot of fast writing, you go to cross that T, you'll notice this one here, it skipped. And I believe one of these here, it also skipped. Once you have the nib on the page, you can, generally speaking, write pretty quick. And it might skip a little bit. I mean, that's really fast scribbles. That's not something you would actually do any real writing. It had a couple skips. But if you're starting a line by doing a really fast strike, like I said, crossing a T, sometimes it, I don't know if this is how well this is going to show up. It'll show, you can barely see the faint lines where the nib started on the paper and it didn't actually put ink till the end. If you're doing like really fast single stroke, where the nib's not already on the paper and the ink's not already flowing, it will kind of not want to start on a quick strike like that. Now, like I said, this is the extra fine nib, so perhaps with a broader nib, a nib that perhaps it runs wetter, it may not have that issue. I have noticed that, I didn't say anything about that in my review because I hadn't noticed it, but as I've used this M2 here a little bit more, I have noticed that with a quick crossing of a T, this one can skip a little bit. And it has that same nib and feed unit as that M2. But like I said, with these, all of the ones that I have, and even my Black Forest pen that I have, which has the slightly different nib and feed unit, they're all extra fines. But I will say this, of course, they've all got different inks in them. But with my Black Forest pen and its slightly different nib and feed, I have not had that issue. So I don't know if it's the nib should be tuned, or I'm kind of speculating it might be due to the feed here being different. Because I did notice one thing that is present on both of these feeds, and I'm going to try and show it right now, if I can. If this will show up, yeah, it is. Alright, so I want you to look here. You can see there, you actually see light. Now, I don't know if that has any effect on how this nib flows. So, you know, for your air exchange, you have a channel that's cut up to the side so that air can get into the pen, because, you know, as ink flows out, air has to go in to get to the back of the pen. Otherwise, if ink's just flowing out, it's going to pull vacuum and your ink won't flow at all. Now, I don't know if those kind of holes where the, you know, the fins and the feed are here that actually hit the ink channel, if that is something to do with this feed flowing different. This is the first feed that I've seen on any of my pens that has that. So I don't know if that's an intentional, if that has anything to do with it, or if that's just some kind of, you know, potentially maybe a defect. I have no idea. Like I said, with these, you have to be writing really fast to get them to skip. And if you're not somebody that's, you know, just blazing through writing something, I would say under most normal circumstances, you would not get these pens to skip. But because I have gotten it to do that, you know, I figured I should mention that. Now, I don't know, that could also be this particular ink with this particular nib and this particular pen feed in this particular pen. Like I said, I haven't inked this one, but I will admit, when I pulled this feed out, I have modified this feed already. You probably won't be able to tell, but I opened up the ink channel a bit on this feed. From here back, you can see the fin, the two, or it's a triple channel in that feed. Well, from here back, I actually opened that up to hopefully promote more flow. I just haven't inked this pen yet, so I was planning on doing that just real quick, but I wanted to show, you know, most of the internal features of this pen, the parts and all, before I did that. So I'm going to ink this pen up real quick, and then I'm going to do a writing test. Well, I've just inked this pen up, and I can tell you, I just discovered something having inked this pen up. I would not suggest inking your Hongdian C2 with Noodler's Bay State Concord Grape. I don't know how well this is going to show, but it actually just stained the section, and that doesn't wipe off. So I know the Noodler's Bay State inks are kind of known to cause some staining issues, but I can confirm if you put a Noodler's Bay State ink in your Hongdian C2, that plastic part of the section is going to get stained. So anyways, Like I said, this is the one with the modified feed, so we're going to see how this one works. Well, that does seem like it did work a little bit better. I was still getting some skipping. When I was doing the really fast strikes where I was going, you know, but then as I continued to, you know, hit those pretty quick, it kind of stopped with the skipping except for a little bit at the end. So it was, it does seem like it helped the flow a little bit. Like I said, that could be perhaps mine need a little bit of nib tuning, but unless you're doing those really fast strikes, both of these seem to flow pretty good. Seem to flow pretty good. Oh, well. Well, I can't remember that quick fox thing. All in all, I think they're a pretty good pen. From what I've used with this one, the nib feels smooth. This one does seem to be a little bit smoother than the yellow. I mean, but that's pen to pen. There's not a whole lot of difference though. They do both have pretty smooth nibs. They have that nice kind of softness to the nib, which you can, if you press on it, you can get a little bit of a line variation. Once again, this is copy paper, so it's pretty absorbent. It'll soak up the ink and make the lines look a little bit larger than some other papers. And I guess I should have mentioned this. The line weight here is about on par with my Lamy Safari with its extra fine. So it's a European extra fine. It's not quite like a Japanese extra fine. In fact, it might. Some of those lines from the Safari are just maybe even a little bit thinner, actually. Once again, that's part of that could be ink and paper too. All in all, I'm mostly pleased with them. It is kind of a bummer that if I'm writing really fast and I go to strike a T, it kind of wants to skip. In that particular instance, that's the only time I've found that in practical use I've made the pen skip. Like I said, this kind of really fast scribbles is not generally how I use a pen. Probably says not generally how most people would use the pens. But I do like the way these nibs feel. I kind of like that softness. Same thing I said in the review with this little Hongdian M2 here. I like that kind of softness. I like how smooth they are, especially considering these are extra fines, and extra fines generally kind of are usually on the scratchy side. But, you know, if you're somebody that writes super duper fast and you do a lot of fast writing and a lot of quick striking of just single lines, you might have flow issues with one of these pens. And like I said, it may not come up the best, but I do not recommend using Noodler's Bay State inks. Found that one out in real time in this video. It will stain that plastic section. Did not have that problem with the red pen, but the yellow pen, it was just literally in the ink long enough for me to ink it and then blot the ink off, and yeah. Do not do that at home. Don't use a Bay State ink in these pens, probably. But with that having all been said, I hope that whoever out there, you know, that you got, if you've watched this long in the video, that you got something out of it, that hopefully it informs you on my experience with the pens, and hopefully that experience was of use to you. If it is, I'd really appreciate a like down there. It'd really help me out. And you know, if you have any criticisms, comments, suggestions, anything that you have to say about the video or other videos, or you know, my way of making these videos, you know, please drop it down there in a comment. All those comments are helpful and appreciated. And if you've watched these videos and you've watched any more of my videos and you like what you see, I'd really appreciate a subscription. It'd really help me out. But that having all been said, I thank you for watching, and I hope to catch you on the next one. Bye.